by House lawmakers. Let's listen in.
DOT&E was a reflection of the overall approach we take in the department, which is how efficiently do we operate? Where are the bottlenecks? We talk about the things you talk about every single day. How do we get how do we get systems, platforms, future capabilities in the hands of warfighters as quickly as possible? And so a review led by myself, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, our friends at DOJ who've worked with us, have helped us look and identify places where we might find efficiencies. Now, I work, and my hands are directly in the middle of that, to ensure that as we seek those efficiencies and reduce those redundancies, we're not doing so in a way that undermines our capabilities or safety for warfighters in the future. DOT&E, after we got rid of a lot of the really low-hanging fruit of tens of billions of contracts and things that we've reduced, that were duplicative, that were completely wasteful, that were creating PowerPoint presentations that no one was looking at, you start to look at things like DOT&E, testing and evaluation, which in a headline sounds quite significant, and it can be in many ways. But when you ask the services, you ask the joint staff, you talk to the comptroller and CAPE, and you go across the other undersecretaries, there's a universal recognition that DOT&E's mission has bloated and expanded well beyond the scope of what it was supposed to be. And as a result, was expanding by months, and sometimes even more than that, the amount of time it was taking for systems to actually make it in the hands of warfighters. So you still have services in other places doing that testing and evaluation. This remains in place at a right size. So we see it as a right sizing of DOT&E. So it still provides that oversight and ensures across the joint force we're recognizing the challenges, but it doesn't add unnecessary time. So we recognize why it was created. We want it to do its job, but not more than its job. And that's what we believe it's doing by reforming it.
Well, thank you for that answer. Obviously, as we expect new systems, new technologies to come online quickly, we want to make sure this committee that we're funding it properly and make sure that you can handle the volume in which that you're anticipating, especially with a new technology like Golden Dome, which, you know, we still, as the ranking member pointed out, we still haven't seen a clear definition of what it is and what it's a strategic theater system, lower 48, Hawaii, Alaska, the rest of it, and how these layered systems are going to be put out there to defend the country and to make sure that we're not spending a lot of money unnecessarily. So testing and evaluation is going to be an important part of that. With that, I recognize Ms. McCullum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, I plan to ask you some budget questions about the following: the cost of the Qatar plane, where the money from the Army's parade is coming from, or the National Guard deployments to the border, where that funding is coming from. I honor and celebrate the United States Army, but I'd like to know how much this parade is going to cost. I have sent the department letters on several occasions on this, and I'm still waiting for a response. But then something else happened this weekend, and it needs to be addressed. And that is the President's premature and escalatory decision to deploy not only the National Guard troops to Los Angeles, but active duty Marines as well. Mr. Secretary, we're both from Minnesota. I was in the Twin Cities during the riots that followed the murder of George Floyd. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets for days. Governor Walz made the decision to call up the Minnesota National Guard. At no point did we need the citizens of Minnesota request that the Marines be deployed. Our state and local law enforcement, along with our National Guard, who have worked on crowd control, they were more than enough. They were more than capable of handling this situation. History has proven that law enforcement and the National Guard are more than capable of handling situations more volatile than what happened this weekend. We all see the continuous loops on TV, but this looks nothing like the George Floyd protests or the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles in 1992. Mr. Secretary, this is a deeply unfair position to put our Marines in. Their service should be honored. It should not be exploited. The President has issued an executive order and talked about deploying troops across the country. Los Angeles County has 17,000 law enforcement personnel, and the state of California has 24,000 National Guard troops. So that's why the Los Angeles Chief Police to say, and I quote, The possible arrival of federal military forces in Los Angeles is absent a clear coordination, presents a significant logistical operational challenge for those of us who are charged with safeguarding the city, the end of his quote. As I mentioned before, in Minnesota, we train for those things together. So there's no need for the Marines to be deployed. So here are my budget questions, though. What is the current cost for what is taking place in California, and how is it going to affect this budget or the budget we're currently serving under? How much are these deployments going to cost for both the Marines and the National Guard? And what training or duties are not taking place because of these deployments? Where in your limited budget, sir, are you going to find, in the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? What holes are being created?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis. The police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground. And because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late mobilized. And President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question.
Are being,
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties, because we ought to be able to enforce immigration law in this country, unlike what Governor Walz did in 2020. There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have implemented. The police chief said she was overwhelmed, so we helped.
If the Secretary's not going to ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies, which is something the National Guard and the Marine plan for. So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the ground.
For budgetary, if he needs to get back to the committee with the numbers, I'd appreciate it, both current and present.
Happy to submit them for the record.
Gentlemen will receive an answer to the question for the record. Gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole.
All right, you are listening in live there, Capitol Hill, where Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is taking questions from the House Appropriations Defense Subcommittee. He is expected today to be questioned on a number of different issues pertaining to the Defense Department's spending budget. He was already answered questions regarding the efficiency in getting our military the tools they need to operate effectively, whether it be nationally or internationally. You are just listening to him being questioned about the Marines and the National Guard being deployed to California, being asked where that money is coming from. You heard him just say that that money is in the budget for situations like this. We're going to continue to monitor this subcommittee. There are a number of things that could come up today. He could be questioned about Signalgate. Of course, you remember that chat where someone was mistakenly added to that chat room. So we are going to monitor this for you. It is happening as we speak. If there's anything else of note, we will make sure we'll take you back there live so you can see and hear it for yourself. In the meantime, we are covering tragic news out of Austria this morning. Police responded to another shooting at a high school in the Australian city of Graz. Sadly, this morning we are reporting that 10 people were killed, mostly teenagers there in Austria. Austria's Interior Ministry is confirming the victims include children between the ages of 14 and 18. The alleged shooter is also dead, and the school is secured at this hour. The investigation continues. We are getting early reports that that shooter may also be a student, so we're waiting for confirmation on that. The country's chancellor describing this attack as a national tragedy that, quote, strikes our country right at its heart. Joe?
New this morning, the National Guard is joining the urgent manhunt in Washington state for a man the police say killed his 3 young daughters during a court-ordered visit. Police have released new photos of the man, Travis Decker. Take a look at these photos. They show his distinctive tattoos and his hair pulled back in a ponytail. Decker is deemed dangerous and possibly armed. This as the search has been handed over to federal authorities. The Chelan County Sheriff's Office will remain an active participant. The Sheriff's Office saying, quote, we had reached a point where we need to rest our local resources. Decker is charged with killing his 3 young daughters, Peyton, age 9, Evelyn, 8, and Olivia, 5. They were found dead last Monday near a campsite roughly 70 miles east of Seattle. Let's bring in Mike Morrison, Chelan County Sheriff. Sheriff, we appreciate you joining us this morning. Where are we in the search currently? And let's talk about your team and needing that rest to get back out there and search for this man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for having us on. So we're currently conducting searches up more in the southwest corner of our county, up towards an area called Blewett Pass, Ingalls Creek, Valley High. I believe that the suspect might be in that area. In regards to resting our staff, we knew that they at least needed a day off. Several of our detectives, other staff working over 100 hours in the week, along with our federal partners. So thankfully, we do have the partnerships. We do have the U.S. Marshal Service, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Homeland Security, Border Patrol, National Guard. So it's, you know, a lucky break for us that we do have those relationships already in place. They've been able to continue on the search as we rested ours, but the focus has continued to be on the criminal investigation and what we need to do to prepare this case for trial.
All right, Sheriff, your office released those photos we're looking at right now of Decker. We see his distinctive tattoos. And what else stands out to you in these photos? And where were they taken? Was it close by? Do you know that?
It was different establishments that he had frequented before he went out to the campsite there last week.
Okay, so that wasn't recent in the last couple of days?
No,
Okay.
no, those are before the incident took place.
Okay, blood was discovered near the campsite where the 3 young sisters were found dead last week, belonging to a man. What do you make of this so far? And do you know if it's him?
Yeah, so we know it does come back to male DNA, and we do have samples of Mr. Decker's DNA that we're comparing, and we appreciate the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab expediting this. Of course, G. Batiste and his staff have been overly helpful with us in this investigation. We're looking forward to getting those results back, and we also had their crime scene team come out and process the scene when we located the vehicle, and we're waiting for some of that evidence to come back too. But, you know, we understand that they're doing everything they can to expedite it, get the results back to us, and it's helped us in our criminal investigation to date. We feel pretty confident heading in. We've communicated pretty clearly with our prosecutor's office to make sure that we're established and ready to go for when this goes to trial.
Sheriff, in searches like this, of course, law enforcement, they want to gather information regarding connections. Are there any connections to Decker in Canada? Because we do know he searched how to relocate to Canada days before his 3 daughters were found dead.
Yeah, not that we're aware of at this time. We're following up all leads. We know that he's resourceful. Clearly, he's an avid outdoorsman. And so we know that he has the capability to adjust and overcome certain challenges, and we're going to continue to track him.
All right, Sheriff Mike Morrison, we certainly appreciate you joining us this morning with this update on this man now on the run again. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks. Have a good night.
Also happening right now, Sean Diddy Combs' ex-girlfriend, referred to as Jane, is back on the stand as the defense begins cross-examination this morning. Just moments ago, we are getting word that she was testifying that she has not seen or spoken to Diddy since his arrest, and that the choices that she made were made under a lot of what she called emotional pressure. Also, in very emotional testimony on Monday, Jane cried as she talked about a text that she sent Diddy after he requested a so-called hotel night. She replied, quote, "I am not a porn star. I am not an animal. I need a break." She also told the jury she fainted when she learned about Cassie Ventura's 2023 lawsuit against Diddy. She testified it was like reading her own story. All right, there is a lot to get to, as there is every single day. We want to bring in Joanna Niewitz. She's a criminal defense attorney and founder of Neves law firm. Joanna, good morning to you. More and more layers here being unraveled. Jane's testimony has included a lot of specific language, saying things like she does not want to do this anymore. She felt like she was reliving her sexual drama as it related to, of course, star witness Cassie Ventura. So this is my question. Why does this matter right now? And how, if in any way, is this connecting to the charges against Diddy?
Morning, Vanjit. I think that you hit the nail right on the head when you talk about layering this testimony. It's just like brick by brick, the prosecution is building the case against him. And the reason it matters is because it's showing pattern. It's showing consistency in the financial control that he had, the coercive measures that he used to bring people into compliance, the ways he silenced them, and even when they expressed that they wanted out, they still felt compelled to stay because of all of the tools of the trade he was using in this enterprise at large.
You know, Jane also testified that in reading Cassie Ventura's story, it's felt so much like her own experience. Why do you think this is coming up right now? Why did that come up?
Yeah, I definitely think that the prosecution brought up the lawsuit to corroborate Jane's testimony, right? To add credibility to what she's saying. This just wasn't one victim, one woman who suffered private domestic abuse at the hands of an individual, but that this was a pattern and practice of Diddy in his the enterprise that they're trying to show. So they want to build that case by showing that the behaviors that he used were similar in nature, that the methods that he employed in gaining that compliance remained consistent throughout multiple witnesses, and not just those that he was in intimate relationships with, but also those that were in his sphere. Cassie's mother, her best friend, Kid Cudi, the new boyfriend that she was interacting with. He employed these measures across the board.
You know, it's interesting. We've had several different analysts come on. We've actually had some analysts say that they don't believe the prosecution's case is rock solid. There may be some gaps that the prosecution is going to have to deal with that could cause a big problem for them. I'm wondering where you see, if any of those gaps, and what does the defense now need to do to represent their client well in this proceeding moving forward?
Absolutely. I think that the major gap is the consensual or the perceived consensual nature of all of this conduct. There were assistants who suffered abuses and claimed sexual assault, but at the same time, they stayed there for several years. There are these women that he was in relationship with that testified to these egregious acts that they had to engage in, but they still stayed. And they still, even Jane at this point, she still receives financial support from him. So I think the defense is going to pounce on those issues where it looks like it's more of a voluntary consensual relationship that had some bad behavior involved, but it wasn't part of an actual criminal enterprise.
Yeah. Well, there's still lots more to come. The prosecution even, in fact, signaling they may wrap early. So we will watch to see what happens there. Joanna Niewitz, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Joe.
Thank you, Pastor.
All right, now to another big case and huge news in the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni legal feud. A federal judge in New York has dismissed Baldoni's counter lawsuit against Lively. The Ends With Us director and star filed that $400 million lawsuit against Lively, her husband, Ryan Reynolds, and her publicist, alleging, quote, extortion and defamation. Well, this bitter feud stemmed from the movie It Ends With Us, and Lively accusing Baldoni of sexual harassment on the set and orchestrating a smear campaign against her. Lively took to her Instagram and spoke out saying, quote, "Last week I stood proudly alongside 19 organizations united in defending women's rights to speak up for their safety. Like so many others, I felt the pain of a retaliatory lawsuit, including the manufactured shame that tries to break us," end quote. Let's bring in Angela Reddick-Wright, Hollywood mediator and attorney. Angela, it's always a pleasure having you on. We appreciate you joining us. The judge, in his 132-page opinion, said Blake Lively did not make any defamatory comments on other than those in her Civil Rights Department complaint. Walk us through the judge's ruling. Why was Baldoni's lawsuit thrown out, given the rules of the law? Break it down for us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And certainly this is breaking news. If we recall, back in December 2024, Blake Lively filed her suit against Justin Baldoni, and then he countersued both against her and the New York Times, alleging with respect to her defamation and an attempt to extort her. So what the judge did yesterday is issued an order dismissing both lawsuits, stating that there's not sufficient evidence for Mr. Baldoni to continue his suits against either Blake Lively or the New York Times. It is very common in a civil lawsuit for either side to seek a motion to dismiss, or the side that seeks a motion to dismiss, or in some jurisdictions called a motion for summary judgment, asking the court to review the evidence in the case so far and to decide if there's enough evidence to go forward. So in this instance, based on the deposition testimony, based on the investigations, based on the text message evidence, the phone calls evidence, witness testimony, the judge decided, based on everything we know at this point, without having to go forward to a jury, there's no basis for Mr. Baldoni to continue his suits against either Lively or the New York Times. So definitely significant, because Ms. Lively is allowed to, at this point, to continue forward with her suits against Mr. Baldoni.
Yeah, I want to say to our viewers who are Team Baldoni, Justin Baldoni, he's not backing down, just releasing a statement saying, quote, "Miss Lively's own claims are no truer today than they were yesterday. And with the facts on our side, we march forward with the same confidence that we had when Miss Lively and her cohorts initiated this battle." So, Angela, the judge has ruled again that Baldoni can file an amended complaint against Lively to try to appeal. What do you believe we will see next, especially from the Baldoni side?
Well, with that statement, it does sound like they are, at a minimum, reviewing their options to determine if it's worth going forward. So I would not be surprised, just given the contentiousness of this litigation, if Mr. Baldoni decided to file an amended complaint, or certainly to appeal the decision of the judge with respect to this current dismissal.
All right. Always a pleasure. Angela Reddick-Wright, we appreciate the insight and your expertise. Thank you. Fanchon?
My pleasure.
Severe storms moving across parts of the country right now, from thunderstorms to high winds, tornadoes, even some tropical systems we are watching. Several states are recovering from wild weather, but the question is the worst still yet to come? Let's check in with meteorologist Dr. Jim Siebert. Jim, good morning to you.
Good morning. That's a great question. And in fact, I think things are going to be a little bit better today. Let me show you what I'm talking about. You know, we got some pretty good storms in Texas, but they're just under severe limits. That's okay. And it's the same sort of thing here on the East Coast. So kind of rainy, a little stormy, but we're not seeing the kind of severe weather that we've seen as of late. Of course, we still got that heat going on out to the west. So there's a marginal risk today for these areas, meaning we're going to see some thunder showers. Maybe a couple will go up to severe limits, maybe a little better chance out in West Texas by El Paso. Now, today we also have a marginal risk way out here, Billings, Idaho Falls, Boise, all the way down into Utah. And so that's a little more on the unusual side to see that out in that part of the country. And then we're also looking at some chances elsewhere as we move on into the rest of the week. Still looking at the very hot temperatures up here to the north. Most of Oregon is being taken out of that, at least for now anyway. So that will begin to change as we start to see some slightly cooler temperatures coming in. Keeping our eyes on the Pacific side here, 2 named storms. One will probably become named, and still in the Atlantic Basin, there is nothing out there to see. So, Fanchon, overall, things are a little bit better today. It's a little stormy, but not nearly as severe as the kind of weather we've been seeing lately.
All right, lots to keep our eye on. Jim, thank you. Good to see you. And that's good news. We're moving in the right direction. We like that.
Me too.
All right, Joe.
All right, coming up, the real story today, Dr. Phil, on commencement speeches.
A great graduation speech doesn't tell somebody what to think, it inspires them to think.
Hey, investing in college is important. How about investing in gold and silver? Let's take a look right now at your Preserve Gold update for this Tuesday. There it is. We'll be right back after this.
What's gold is new again, pardon the pun. But considering gold has been used as currency since around 550 BCE, it has been on fire the past year. I'm here with Daniel Boston, the founder of Preserve Gold. Why is gold so stable and such a good investment for many people?
Take the central bank, for example, the Federal Reserve. They print money out of thin air, and then they take that printed money to go buy hard assets like gold to protect themselves against the very risks that they're creating. So I always tell people, don't do what the big players are telling you to do. Do what they're doing themselves.
Yeah, watch what they're doing.
That's correct.
Okay. If people are interested in investing with Preserve Gold, how do they get started?
You can give us a call at our toll-free number, 844-407-6375. You can text Phil to 50505, or you can check out our website, www.drphilgold.com.
All right. No way you can miss it.
Well, we have heard so much about sleep cream and how it can help you to sleep like a baby, but will it work for everyone? Well, based on all the feedback, sleep cream should improve sleep for almost any adult who uses it nightly. Even if you don't think you're sleeping better, you may feel more alert and refreshed during the next day. It will vary from person to person, and if you have underlying sleep issues, sleep cream may be less effective. Again, consult your physician before using any product to help you sleep, including sleep cream.
Sleep Cream is the revolutionary all-natural cream made of organic oils and plant extracts. Simply apply Sleep Cream at bedtime and start enjoying. Sleep like a baby and bright-eyed, bushy-tail mornings. I mean, you do want to start sleeping better, right? Try Sleep Cream today.
To order, visit sleepcream.com to start sleeping better guaranteed. And for a limited time, get free shipping on your first order by using code PHIL at checkout at sleepcream.com.
I have a question for you. When did graduation stop being a celebration of pomp, circumstance, achievement, milestone, and start sounding like a radical revolution? Before I share the headlines and give you the real story, I just want to take 2 minutes and you tell me what's wrong with these graduation speeches.
Israel continues to indiscriminately rain bullets and bombs on worshipers, murdering the old, the young, attacking even funerals and graveyards.
The genocide currently occurring is supported politically and militarily by the United States, is paid for by our tax dollars.
This means that Israel's assault on the Palestinian people is not only aided and abetted by our country, but our school.
We are literally graduating the same month a fascist has taken office.
None of us are free until Palestine is free. Thank you.
Those were speeches from Middlebury College, City University of New York, NYU, MIT, and George Washington University. Now, we can be here all day listening to this garbage. This is just one last shot to indoctrinate students before they toss the cap and walk off the stage. And you know what? It's not what it should be about. Even when there are consequences, even when it's a student and they get booted, people have still had to sit there and have the moment spoiled. It's their moment, it's their achievement, and their family is there to celebrate, and you have some arrogant, narcissistic, self-important twit up there that decides their thinking is so important they can hijack the whole situation because they need to be heard. Well, here's a thought. Shut up. That New York law student went off script calling Israel's actions genocide and demanding divestment. Her diploma was held. She was banned from events. But you know what? Everybody still had to sit through it. By the way, there are about 6,000 Jewish students at NYU, grad and undergrad. That's 10% of the student body. Imagine being a Jewish graduate or parent sitting there in that room having to hear that. Now, you may have an opinion. You may agree with her. I don't know. I disagree because the facts don't bear that out. But whether you agree or disagree, that's not the time to do it. What made her the repository of all knowledge to come in and hijack everybody's graduation to vent her thoughts? And the headlines don't do justice to the disgracefulness. Here's a headline: graduates speak their minds. Universities freak out. Student speaker accuses Israel of genocide at MIT graduation. Invited keynote speakers know better, right? Well, CBS's Scott Pelley took his invitation to speak at Wake Forest graduation as an opportunity to go on an anti-Trump diatribe.
Our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack.
Lauded filmmaker Ken Burns broke his stated neutrality at Brandeis during his commencement speech to warn against a second Trump term.
There is no real choice this November. There is only the perpetuation, however flawed and feeble you might perceive it, of our fragile 249-year-old experiment.
And I've already spoken about Minnesota Governor Tim Walz in his speech comparing ICE to Gestapo.
Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
And it's not just on the left. Harrison Butker, kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, told graduates at Benedictine College that women should embrace homemaking.
Embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
And called Pride Month a sin. Even the college's founding nuns called his views misaligned with their values. Here's the problem. These aren't speeches, they're sermons with a congregation that did not ask to be preached to. This should be about achievement, not ideology. Political agendas are hijacking one of life's most meaningful milestones. Graduation is not the time to grandstand. It's the time to elevate others. It's not always about you, speaker. It ain't about you, it's about them. Suspend your ego. You were honored to be asked, and you got to come run your own agenda? That's what I said. Shut up. The psychology of soapbox. This is a real thing. Psychologists call it spotlight narcissism. The belief that your ideas are so important that they deserve center stage no matter the context, that you're just so insightful, you got so much to say that no matter where you are, no matter what the circumstance, everybody needs to suspend their agenda to hear you. But just because you've got the mic does not mean it's the right moment. Aristotle said that persuasion isn't just speaking well, it's speaking ethically. Let me remind you what a real graduation speech is supposed to sound like. Conan O'Brien.
Fall down, make a mess, break something occasionally, give this guy a hard time. Know that your mistakes are your own unique way of getting to where you need to be. And remember that the story is never over.
Oprah Winfrey.
There is no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction. Now, when you're down there in a hole, it looks like failure.
And one that really stands out, Steve Jobs, 2005, Stanford University's commencement speech.
Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary.
None of them were up there to push an agenda, and God knows they have them, and they have pushed them at other times. But in that moment, they decided, hey, it ain't about me. It's about the student. It's about the parents who've made sacrifices. So you know what? I'm going to put myself aside and honor the work that's been done, the sacrifices that have been made. They were there to plant hope. I've been there myself. I was honored to give a commencement speech at the University of North Texas, where I earned my doctorate, and at Pepperdine University. And I have to tell you, looking out at all of those beaming parents, nervous grads, hopeful faces, you just realize it's not your moment. It's theirs. You're not there to change minds. You're there to lift hearts. You're there to inspire. You're there to send them off with hope in their heart, with just a real spring in their step. That's truly the real story. This isn't about free speech. It's about abusing the privilege, taking advantage of an honor, ruining a moment in someone else's life because you think you're just so important you got to be heard. That's not bold. It's selfish. Nobody's saying you can't have opinions. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I believe in free speech. I'll fight to defend it. But graduation isn't the time to score points. It's the time to say thank you to the parents, the teachers, the friends, the classmates who sat next to all of those kids out there that work so hard. So if you're ever invited to speak, inspire. Don't beat a drum. Remind people what unites them, not what divides them. And to university leaders, don't book speakers who crave chaos. Choose leaders who know how to honor the moment, who realize it's not always about them. A great graduation speech doesn't tell somebody what to think, it inspires them to think. And that is the real story.
I thought we had a plan for Dad. He was set to go to the senior living community right by my house. Then a friend suggested I talk to a place for Mom. They really opened my eyes. My advisor listened and understood his needs and showed us options that were still nearby, but a better fit for Dad. Now he's in a warm, engaging community with a big group of friends. I know we made the better choice.
For free senior living advice, go to aplaceformom.com.
Breaking right now at Dr. Phil's Merit TV, the anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles entering day 5. The Trump administration coming down hard, announcing an extra 2,000 National Guard troops, 4,000 in total now, and 700 Marines mobilized. But California leadership says, we don't need your help, and they're suing over it. This as police make more arrests and the protests go national. Our special coverage live.
Also breaking right now, a school shooting in Austria. At least 10 killed, mostly teenagers, another 30 in the hospital, some with severe injuries. The alleged shooter believed to be among the dead. We have the latest from Austria.
Severe storms across the country this hour, high winds, tornadoes, even tropical storms from the Midwest heading east. We're tracking it all.
Plus, the Diddy trial, Combs' accuser Jane back on the stand today, speaking out against the ex-music mogul and facing cross-examination in a Manhattan courthouse.
And Justin Baldoni's $400 million countersuit against Blake Lively thrown out of court. What this means for Hollywood's biggest feud. Breaking news on Dr. Phil's Merit TV for this Tuesday. I'm Joe Gum. We appreciate you joining us.
And I'm Fanchon Stinger. We are all over the newest developments this morning. We can tell you at least 40 people are now under arrest for criminal activity during the protest in Los Angeles. Those arrested are facing charges ranging from assault on an officer and attempted murder to looting and failure to disperse. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is offering a $50,000 reward for information on a man caught throwing rocks at officers. That man is now identified as El Padillo Rea.
And as a result of the unrest, there is now a growing military presence in Los Angeles, despite local officials slamming the move by the White House. President Trump ordering an additional 2,000 National Guard troops to deploy in Los Angeles, but in an effort to deal with anti-ICE protests now entering their 5th day. Additionally, a battalion of 700 U.S. Marines have been mobilized to L.A. in response to the riots. The Marines will largely be tasked with protecting federal property and federal personnel.
Also, California Governor Gavin Newsom, he says the state of California is now suing to remove National Guard troops. The governor's office saying it is, quote, completely uncalled for. Newsom also responding to the Marine deployment, writing this on X, quote, the Secretary of Defense is illegally deploying them onto American streets so Trump can have a talking point at his parade this weekend. It is a blatant abuse of power. We will sue to stop this.
President Trump, meanwhile, is defending the decision, saying he had no choice.
We have an incompetent governor, so I talked about governors, but I didn't talk about he's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states. And if I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is not only blaming the troop deployment for contributing to the destruction in the city, but also the ICE raids as well.
We need to stop the raids. This should not be happening in our city. It is not warranted, and the only thing it does is contribute to chaos.
As the country watches what's going on in California, as you can see there, cars burning, streets during the day getting very, very crowded with so many people converging in so many of those different locations. The mayor and the head of the Los Angeles Police Department saying this is about criminal activity.
You can't possibly be supporting immigrants and vandalize our city, and understand that if you do that, and it is 100% unacceptable, you will be arrested.
Correspondent Maribel Gonzalez is live for us in Los Angeles right now. Maribel, we are now entering the 5th day of demonstrations. Yesterday, when you joined us and we spoke with you, for the most part, it was calm, but it was early. Did things change throughout the day?
Yeah, good morning, Joe. They certainly did. And, you know, yesterday looked a lot like what we're seeing here, right? A lot of calmness, quiet here in the downtown Los Angeles area. But as we saw in the afternoon, those protests resumed, and later on in the evening and throughout the night, more tensions between and confrontations between some of the protesters and law enforcement agents. I will tell you that there is the quietness is happening here in the downtown Los Angeles area, but the law enforcement patrolling of this area has not let up. We've seen Los Angeles Police Department very early morning here patrolling the area, blocking off certain intersections here. And then, as you can see behind me, Joe, the vehicles of some of the National Guard members parked outside the facility. While we did not see them outside with shields in hand like we did yesterday standing by, some of them are outside of their vehicles, and we know that they're here to help support with any sort of security protection of this federal facility should more unrest unravel.
We do know that the Governor Newsom, and the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, both blaming the Trump administration, saying that the chaos escalated when he brought in those National Guard troops. Share with us the details that lawsuit filed by California's Attorney General regarding the order to bring in the National Guard.
Yeah, so their position is basically that, you know, they're taking away from the sovereignty of the state. And this is the first time in decades that a president has deployed the National Guard to a state without that state's consent or request. And so Governor Gavin Newsom is asking for those National Guard troops to leave Los Angeles. He's also asking to halt any further deployment of troops, and asking, you know, them to rescind this power and to bring it back, the power to the state to decide on how to control and manage these protests. So that is a big point of contention right now between the state and federal governments. Los Angeles Mayor, as you mentioned, Karen Bass, saying that this deployment has only further intensified the tensions here in the city of Los Angeles.
And Maribel, we also had on earlier on our show Democratic billionaire, entrepreneur, and gubernatorial candidate for 2026, Stephen J. Klubeck. He also saying that it caused chaos. Everything was fine until that happened. We'll find out what a judge has to say about that lawsuit. Maribel Gonzalez for us live in Los Angeles this morning. Thank you.
The war of words between Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. escalating at this hour. President Trump posting on Truth Social just this morning, quote, "If I didn't send in the troops to Los Angeles the last 3 nights, that once beautiful and great city would be burning to the ground right now, much like 25,000 houses burned to the ground in L.A. due to an incompetent governor and mayor." Correspondent Brian Abel, live for us at the White House at this hour with this part of the story. And Brian, my goodness, these tensions between the president and California Governor Gavin Newsom growing today. We're all seeing the video. Violence is escalating, and there is real concern for people's safety, especially the police. What's the latest?
Yeah, this war of words is really continuing. It continues to build and build and build as the hours continue as well, especially with that Truth Social post you just read there by the president. But all of this is with the backdrop of the president's decision to deploy troops to the protests in Los Angeles, both the National Guard as well as some 300 Marines, but especially the doubling down of the National Guard troops, some 2,000 more that are being sent according to the White House. So that's double what the initial amount was. And that's really where some of this back and forth has continued today between the president and Governor Newsom, who said that the initial deployment of troops, some of them haven't even been put to work yet, and really generating this question of whether this is justified to send the initial, the doubling down of the troops, as well as the initial Marines being sent here as well, because you have the situation where you have troops that, according to Governor Newsom, has not been used yet, and then you're sending even more. But part of the reason for that question still being in the air of the justification of all this actually comes from the president himself yesterday in the Oval Office, saying that he believed that the protests were now under control and heading in the right direction. So you have that, and then you also have the governor saying that the National Guard was not put to work, and it just really further highlights the rhetoric between the two here that began to snowball since the weekend, and perhaps reaching a climax when President Trump suggested that Border Czar Tom Homan should arrest Governor Newsom, and then also Governor Newsom calling Trump unhinged. Now, in a CNN interview last night, Tom Homan did say that the governor has not done anything to warrant an arrest so far. But meanwhile, while this is happening, there are still active conversations here at the White House about the president invoking the Insurrection Act. So nothing has been off the table yet. And meanwhile, also, the work of the White House continues. You have in London the trade conversations happening between the U.S. and China. And then you also have the president heading to Fort Bragg today to kick off what's really a week's worth of celebration of the Army's 250th birthday that will culminate on the president's 79th birthday this weekend with that massive military parade that will include tanks as well as flyovers as just part of the event's expansion.
All right. Well, we know he will be questioned on a myriad of different issues. No doubt there will be some fireworks. We will be watching it, as we know you will be as well. Brian Abel, live from the White House. Thank you so much, Brian. Good to see you.
Let's bring in Major Glenn Ignacio, retired Special Ops Air Force Major and national security expert. Major, we appreciate you joining us once again. We are seeing this blame game play out between the California governor and President Trump, with Governor Newsom saying it's Trump's fault. Looking at the unrest, we do know that those are the agitators melded in with those who are actually there just to protest. So in your opinion, was it warranted to bring in the national troops, or is the governor correct in saying they weren't needed?
In my opinion, I think activating the troops and at least the National Guard and getting them is the best thing. I mean, this is something that the law enforcement can't do 24/7 without some type of reserve. So having the Guard there to do this and to support them is just fine. It's one of the things that have been done for natural disasters. This happened in 1992 when the LA riots, which were much worse, kicked off. So having that presence to try to squelch it as much as possible, I think was the best thing. I think more of this rhetoric between the governor and the president seems to be inciting people more than the president of the Guard. And I'm looking at this apolitically as best as I can.
Okay, so fair enough, Major, with the National Guardsmen. The Marines, bringing those in, is that piling on, or are they needed?
Well, I think that adding the Marines is a interesting and really a complicating segment. So when they're saying they're bringing in more Guard additionally today, I would really enforce and bring in the National Guard. They're considered a state militia. They are activated under a thing called Title 10, which means federalization underneath Trump. So the National Guard has this understanding to work with state authorities very well. As far as the Marines, they are active duty, and that's a whole different beast about how this coordination is going to happen. And I think it complicates things, and I would have waited on that. But again, that's how it's unfolding.
All right, we had a guest on earlier. He's a gubernatorial candidate for 2026, a billionaire and entrepreneur, Stephen Klubeck. He said that this all started because of the ICE raids. He said that Tom Homan and his ICE team did not coordinate with local officials. Of course, California is a sanctuary city. Do you believe that's true? Should there have been some coordination in there instead of just coming up? Because according to him, in his words, he was saying it was kind of random, and that's why people sort of got interested in this and started the protest. And then, of course, you had the agitators who were melded into those who just weren't happy with what ICE was doing.
Yeah, again, I always watch it because, again, we see the political thing going back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. And honestly, I do believe that is really escalating things for everybody, and they need to come together to solve this. Now, as far as working this out and getting that in place, now the ICE raids, from understanding with Tom Homan, that he was actually saying that there is a warrant that was out for this facility. There was much more complex than just illegals. These were individuals that were sending money to different cartels. So as far as that coordination, if that coordination doesn't cause any delays, sure, I think that would assist things. But at the same time, how complex is that? We don't know. And so I think that these raids will continue, but they have to continue with those warrants and everything on a legal presence. And that's when people are getting upset, thinking that they're just walking into any facility and grabbing people. If that's the case, I think that's wrong. But I think this coordination would be better if it doesn't delay.
Major, you were deployed to California, the National Guard in the 1990s. Based on what you're seeing, talk to us about the two certain groups that we've been discussing all morning. Those who show up, the 58-year-old father who just wants to go out and protest, has a sign, doing some chanting, maybe is raising his fist. But then you have another group of people sort of melded into that larger group of people who are masked. They're throwing things. They're pushing back on law enforcement. Where do you believe that group, those that are being arrested, where do you believe that group is coming from? Is someone paying them to show up? Are they coming up in buses? What are you hearing?
Yeah, now this is the interesting part when you look at any of the riots. So first of all, 1992 was massive, and it was definitely different than what we see. However, as soon as violence starts in any way, shape, or form, or breaking, items or striking people, the protest ends, like it or not. I completely support protests. That's what we have our rights, the Constitution for it. But as soon as violence begins, it changes that. What we do see, and this is something that's known across the United States, is these individuals from Antifa, anarchists, they actually do come in, and it's like Wolfpack. They stir things up, and people do things in a group that they wouldn't normally do individually. That is happening, and there are organizations that are actually paying people to get involved. That's not just hearsay. That actually happens, and that's where we have these problems across the country that sometimes escalate from normal protests, and that's very unfortunate in the problem.
Yeah, we're seeing that right now in this video that we're watching that's playing. We're seeing the protesters disperse when that group comes in that you just explained. Major Glenn Ignacio, always a pleasure. Thank you for your insight. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. Fanchon?
Great. Liz.
Well, still to come this morning, breaking news, a shocking school shooting in Austria, at least 10 dead, sadly. Prayers pouring in from around the world. We've got details on that next. Plus, bombshell testimony continues this morning in the Sean Diddy Combs trial with his ex-girlfriend Jane back on the stand right now for cross-examination. We'll get you the latest on that when Dr. Phil's Merit TV returns right after this.
It's called unschooling, where the child directs his or her education through their own interest. You say your children will never set foot in a classroom.
We want them playing all day. We've been working on a fairy village, collecting sticks. We're wanting them to think for themselves.
You seem to be thinking for them. Is anybody monitoring what y'all are doing? She says it caused serious problems when she decided to pursue college.
I had almost no math or science background.
Do you feel like you were cheated? That's tonight on Dr. Phil Primetime.
It's a deep and dangerous hatred that has followed the Jewish people for thousands of years. And in the darkest chapter, the horrors of the Holocaust.
All our family, everyone were murdered. We came back to our homeland, and on October 7th, we felt that somebody is trying to kill us again.
They are the last living witnesses